First of all, Erev Tov. It's a long drive from Jerusalem. I didn't drive. My neighbor did, who was also a taxi driver. So I want to thank him. I want to thank you, Inbar, for the invitation.
Know thy neighbor.
Yes, love thy neighbor, not just know thy neighbor. A few words about myself personally. I am originally not from here, as you can hear from my accent. Originally from the United States. Came here in 1969, been here for 42 years. And my professional life is a high school teacher in Jerusalem, high school and college level. I've been at Yad VaShem for over 23 years and watched the institution grow over the years. And we have an international school for Holocaust studies. You've all been to Yad VaShem, correct? I won't ask who hasn't been there, not to embarrass anybody. But if you haven't been there, please visit. Our new historical museum, which opened up in 2005. We have a school for Holocaust studies that most people don't know. About 300,000 people go through that international school for Holocaust studies every year. These are Israeli high school students. These are soldiers, birthright groups, and international teachers. We have over 1,000 international teachers from all of the European countries, South America, North America. We just had our second international seminar for educators from China. You might ask, what do the Chinese want to know about the Holocaust? And it's fascinating, some of the connections that they have, a very difficult narrative of World War II themselves in Nanjing. There was a Jewish ghetto in Shanghai. And we do seminars, again, from people from all over the world, and that is my particular job at Yad VaShem. I've been asked to speak about Holocaust denial. Holocaust denial has nothing to do with the Holocaust. On the other hand, has everything to do with it. And this is not going to be a straightforward presentation. I'm going to ask you questions. You're going to have to give me answers, whether you like it or not. And my first question to you all, how many have been in Poland? Trips to Poland? Okay. Holocaust denial. And you can all do this on your own laptops or your iPhones, or whatever you may have, the technology at your fingertips. Just Google the word Holocaust. Don't write Holocaust denial in the Google bar, just write the word Holocaust. Hit enter. You get about 35 million hits. Among the first 100 sites that come up, you're going to see, if you scroll down, maybe 10, 20, Ahmadinejad is going to start popping up, other Holocaust deniers. In other words, in the superhighway of information, Holocaust denial is there, and it's readily available to anybody that wants to hack into it, even just under the context of Holocaust, not just Holocaust denial. Some of the sites are very well done, some are very primitive, but it's out there in cyberspace, and this is what people are accessing. Who goes to a library? Do you go to libraries anymore? They're obsolete. You have Google this and Google that. Google Academic, you get everything off of Google. And that's what people are doing. Essentially, what Holocaust denial, and I'm going to begin from the end. As a teacher, I always like to begin my presentations from the end, so at least if someone falls asleep, the first 3 minutes you have the entire point of my lecture, and then you can fall asleep. And what's the end? Holocaust denial is the new form of anti-Semitism. It's essentially a new form of this Jewish conspiracy. What we learned about the turn of the 20th century, 1902, 1901, we don't know the exact date, the protocols of the Elders of Zion, where the Jews are masterminding some kind of worldwide conspiracy, economically, politically, culturally, to take over the world. Holocaust denial in the 21st century is a new form of this old anti-Semitism where there's some kind of Jewish conspiracy. Jews talk about the Holocaust because they want money. What do we hear about today in the news? Swiss banks, Jewish property, restitution. We don't hear the stories. We're hearing about restitution. Jews are using the Holocaust to create empathy, sympathy for the state of Israel, money for the state of Israel. Holocaust is some kind of a smokescreen that is used by Jews to confuse reality vis-a-vis political reality that may be here in the Middle East or other political situations that are arising. So that's what the Holocaust by many people is seen today. And I'm not going to talk about Ahmadinejad and what's going on in the Arab Muslim world where Holocaust denial is their bread and butter. I'm going to talk about Holocaust denial in the Western world and people that are denying the Holocaust that are Western, Christian. Some have academic degrees. None of them have academic degrees in history, of course, but they do have academic degrees in different fields. And they're denying the Holocaust. And I'm going to take you through sort of an exercise to show you how easy it is to deny the Holocaust. Another question, how many of you have grandparents or parents, it's a very young audience, that are Holocaust survivors? Raise your hands. Okay, so you've heard stories. You know personal stories. I've been to Poland over 20 times. Been to the different death camps. I've taken Israeli students, educators, IDF officers on a special program that's called Edim B'Madim, Witnesses in Uniform. And I've been to different places on more than one occasion. We're going to see together that what these people are saying, it's difficult to hear, but we do have objective problems, and they're going to continue, especially what Inbar said here, where you're the last generation that's going to be able to hear from Holocaust survivors personally their first-hand experiences. Your children will not be able to hear their experiences. I'm going to show you some things in one of the ways that Holocaust denial is being used. I call this Holocaust Reversal. It's a form of denial. There are certain types of Holocaust revisionism, reversal, relativism, the Holocaust being trivialized and relativized in different places. This is what we call Holocaust Reversal. It's not very old. It's May 2005, the Kleine Zeitung, an Austrian newspaper. May 2004. And we have Austrian educators that come to Yad VaShem. I've asked them, is this a left-wing or right-wing, some off-the-radar newspaper? It's a mainstream newspaper in Austria that Joe reads there in Vienna or other places in Austria. And what you have here is Ernst und Jetzt, then and now. You see the Nazi soldier? Now that little boy, if he had his hands up in the air like this, would be one of those iconic images that we have from the Warsaw Ghetto, May 1943, that little boy raising his hands and surrendering. You have the same soldier. Look at his features. Different helmet, but now he's wearing a Magen David, the same child, but now he's wearing keffiyeh. And the idea here that this newspaper has tried to present is that what's going on today, the new Nazis, the Israelis, the new Jews are the Palestinians. Yad VaShem usually does not comment and respond to this type of propaganda. Our Commander-in-Chief, Avner Shalev, when this was publicized, gave an order through our spokesman to respond and demand an apology for making a mishmash of the entire historical situations. You have two very different historical events here that there's no connection with them whatsoever, and this mishmash has essentially confused and turned both of the historical events into things that have no connection but look connected over here. By the way, they did apologize. Several weeks later, on page 5, at the bottom of the page, there was an apology. And this is being used, you see this more in Europe than you see in the United States and North America, but this type of propaganda is being used today very heavily in different places. I'm going to show you a Holocaust denier. Has anyone seen this person before? This is Bishop Williamson. Anyone heard of him before? If you haven't, Google it. Okay, that's all I did. That's how I found him. This is a Catholic bishop in England. Up until recently, he was not part of the Catholic, he was excommunicated. He was outside the realm of the Catholic Church because of his very conservative right-wing views, did not accept Vatican II, Nostra Aetate, didn't accept all these things, and he was outside the realm of the church. The present Pope, Benedictus, brought him back into the church, and this is something he said just a few years ago. Let's listen to what he's saying.
I believe that the historical evidence is strongly against, is hugely against 6 million Jews having been deliberately gassed in gas chambers as a deliberate policy of Adolf Hitler.
But you say not one Jew was killed.
In gas chambers.
So there was no gas chambers.
I believe there were no gas chambers. Yes. I think as far as I have studied the evidence, I'm not going by emotion, I'm going by, as far as I've understood the evidence, I think, for instance, people who are against what is very widely believed today about, quote-unquote, the Holocaust, I think that people those people conclude, the revisionists as they're called, I think the most serious conclude that between 200,000 and 300,000 Jews perished in Nazi concentration camps, but not one of them by gassing in a gas chamber.
Okay, let's kind of deconstruct what he's saying there. First of all, let's not go by emotions. Let's look at the facts, the evidence. There were no gas chambers. And maybe 200,000 or 300,000 Jews died in concentration camps during World War II. I do want to contextualize things here. It's estimated, you can take the book by Gerhard Weinberg, A World at Arms, you can go through 1,000 pages and about 600 footnotes, as I gesint. That's the best book on World War II. Martin Gilbert, History of World War II. Most of the major military historians talk about the numbers between 40 and 60 million people that lost their lives during World War II, mostly civilians. This is the European theater of operations, North Africa, Pacific, China, all the different theaters of operations during World War II. It's estimated that among them, 20 to 30 million were from the USSR alone, mostly civilians. Within this context, several 100,000 Jews died as well. Happens. When you bomb Rotterdam, or Warsaw, or Coventry, London, everyone dies. The Battle of Stalingrad. Anyone see the movie, Enemy at the Gate? Yeah. Do you watch movies here at the Technion? You're allowed to? Yeah, you see movies sometimes? Yeah. It's actually a real, it's based upon a character who's a real-life character who was a sniper in the Russian army. And the Battle of Stalingrad, which began August 1942, ended in February 1943, it's estimated that 600,000 Soviet citizens and soldiers lost their lives. An entire German army, 250,000, the 6th German Army, von Paulus, all capitulated or died as well. Tremendous carnage. Within that, everyone's dying. Jews, non-Jews, everybody. So this is how he contextualized it, by saying that maybe several 100,000 Jews died as well. Now, the things he said here were very offensive. Google it. He gave an apology. And he said that if I hurt anyone's feelings, I apologize. But he's never retracted the content of what he said here, and he's still part of this Catholic Church, a bishop, Catholic bishop. He has a following. This is what makes Holocaust now more dangerous than Ahmadinejad. People like this. We're going to have to deal with them. Yes, you wanted to ask a question. Your name?
Yes. My name is Pavel.
Pavel.
I want to ask first why Yad VaShem does not respond to all these accusations.
We're going to get to that, Pavel. Good question, and we are responding. I've actually written something about this over 15 years ago. So we are, and doing it, by the way, in every international seminar that we have at Yad VaShem, we deal with this topic. So any educator that comes from abroad gets this as part of that seminar. We talk about this as a phenomenon and how to, I'm going to show you how we combat and how we deal with this phenomenon. I want to show you another short video clip. This is from Phil Donahue. It's old, about 15 years old, but he's interviewing a Holocaust denier here. And it's interesting to hear what the denier says.
Anybody should ask the question, but they are. Did the Holocaust really happen? And what proof do we have that even one Jew was killed in a gas chamber? Those questions, however, are being asked and causing furors on campuses all across America, provoked by an ad which is offered by the person that you're about to meet, who suggests that the Holocaust needs revisiting. Here is how we put it in this report prepared for our program. Watch this. In just the last 6 months, 15 college newspapers across the country have run advertisements that call for a, quote, open debate of the Holocaust, unquote. The ad claims that the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum in Washington, D.C. has no proof whatever of homicidal gassing chambers, and no proof that even one individual was gassed in a German program of genocide. The ads have caused an uproar everywhere, sparking protests from students and boycotts of the papers. The man who placed all the ads, Bradley Smith, has been called anti-Semitic and a neo-Nazi because of the challenges of the Holocaust. Smith claims he simply wants the truth to be told, that Jews were never placed in gas chambers, and that the figure of 6 million Jewish deaths is an irresponsible exaggeration. And he's not alone in his beliefs. A recent poll by the Roper organization found that 22% of all Americans believe it's possible the Holocaust never happened. Another 12% say they don't know. So in a time when over 5,000 visitors are crowding the new Holocaust Museum every day, and the film Schindler's List is reducing jaded moviegoers to tears, the question should be asked, how can anyone claim the Holocaust was a hoax? The man responsible for those ads is with us, Bradley Smith, who is going to tell us that he is not an anti-Semite and he's not a Jew.
However, you introduced the story inaccurately, and so did your man on the television. We never say, it's simply a press cliche. Nobody says the Holocaust never happened. This is one of the things that should be gotten straight right away. I had to change the text of my ad. The text now reads, I do not say the Holocaust never happened. What I say is, if there were no gas chambers, what was the Holocaust? It's a very different thing, and press should try to start getting right. No, it's very important.
All right. You do not deny that anti-Semitism in Europe in the 30s, most especially Germany, Poland, and environments, was visceral, and that Hitler...
We're not talking about any of that.
Please don't be upset with my question.
I'm not upset, but the question is outside the parameter of the issue. I'm running an advertisement that says the museum...
We're 3 minutes into this program, and you don't like my question.
The question has nothing to do with what I'm doing.
No.
Let's
accept your point here. May I ask you the courtesy of responding to this question?
Yeah, sure.
Do you believe that there was engineered by Hitler and the Third Reich a strategy of eliminating Jews called the final solution? Do you believe that?
I don't believe it anymore. I used to. I don't believe it. But that's not what I'm talking about. See, if you don't understand what I'm talking about, you won't ask the right question. The question is this. We have a $200 million museum in Washington, D.C. It's in America. It's not in Europe. And in the museum, the whole museum is dedicated to the proposition that Jews were killed in gas chambers. They don't have any proof in the museum that Jews were killed in gas chambers. As a matter of fact, they're so sure of guys like you will never ask them the questions they even invent in the press, nothing personal. In the press, guys like you, they've even invented a new gas chamber for the museum that we've never heard about before. And they don't even know where it is. The historian says it may have been, quote unquote, near Gießen. This is the best historical writing that $200 million can buy?
I didn't interrupt you. Now, I do ask you, however imperfect my questions may be, to at least grant me the courtesy of trying to speak to these questions.
Sure.
This is just to figure out
I'd like to do
where you are, and it is in point in my imperfect opinion. Do you believe people in Nazi Germany were taken away and killed because they were Jewish?
Well, they were certainly taken away, and Jews were killed. Everybody was killed. This is one of the vulgarities of this story. is that some 40 millions of people were killed during World War II, and were asked to be unusually sensitive to a fragment of those who were killed. We're all
So the
sensitive.
Jews did not suffer any, the Jews did not suffer because of their Jewishness.
Sure, Poles suffered because of their Polishness, Ukrainians because of the Ukrainianness, the Latvians because of the Latvianness.
Yes.
What is the thing is that if there's a moral issue here, are Jews more important in the murder and chaos that went on during World War II than all other human beings in Europe? If we're interested in suffering, let's discuss it.
It's not,
That's very powerful. He's all over the place, but the last thing he says is very powerful. 40 million people died during World War II. We have a moral issue here. The Jews more important? Why are we being asked to be more sensitive to them vis-a-vis everyone else that suffered during war? Gypsies, Russian POWs, Poles, 3 million Poles lost their lives, 250,000 Gypsies, over 200,000 German Aryans in the Euthanasia Project, the T4 Project. Homosexuals were persecuted, sent to camps. Why are we being asked to be more sensitive to this particular group? And he throws it out there. And I want to ask you all a question. The number 6 million. Where does the number come from? Don't all answer at once. One by one. Where does the number 6 million come from? Your first name. Etana.
It's an estimation by the records that the Germans kept.
Estimation by the records that Germans kept. Nicht, nein, niet. On all counts. Germans never kept records of the number of Jews they were killing in death camps. Didn't write it down. Back to the drawing board. How do we know the number 6 million? First name. Shachal.
They kept a record of estimations about how many Jews there were in each country.
Shachal. Beautiful. Hope you're learning mathematics, huh? Yes? Hope so. Okay, let's walk down the road that Shachal just paved for us. Shachal knows, I'm helping you now a little, okay, that in the 1930s, there was a German Jew. We have the book in Yad VaShem, did an entire demographic survey of the number of Jews living throughout the world. By the way, that same book in German, Eichmann took out in November 1941 to prepare the Wannsee Conference. Same book. And we know that in 1939, according to this book, there are about 16.5 million Jews living throughout the world in 1939. Shachar, expert mathematician, he knows 1945, I deduct 6 million, and I got maybe 10.5 million Jews that are left in 1945, correct? Thank you. We have a problem here at the Technion in the mathematics department. Problem is that in 1945, that number, nobody knew. Nobody knew that number. Shah, we have a problem. We know how many Jews are living in Australia, in America, how many came here. Where were most of the Jews killed? Poland, Ukraine, Romania, Hungary. How many Jews were alive there after the war? Let's say, I'm going to take you to the Effie time machine. Me and Shachar are going to go on my time machine. We're going to go back to Warsaw, Lvov, Lublin, Krakow, Radom, Częstochow. Cities in Poland where there are tens and even hundreds of thousands of Jews living there before the war. 1945, 8th of May, the war is over. We go back to visit those communities. We can't find between the two of us a handful of Jews in those different cities and towns. Does that mean the people we can't find are dead? Shachar? I hope you're not learning law. No? Does that mean they're dead? Yes or no? Thank you. So what does that mean? Maybe they went somewhere else. Possible? Where'd they go? Where? They're hiding? All those Jews are hiding somewhere? Maybe they went to the Soviet Union. Possible? Yeah. Some did, by the way. Some did. So how do we know the number? Where does number 6 million come from? Come on, all the Israelis sitting here. Every year, you light 6 candles. We have commemorations. You did Bagut. Hopefully you passed it, otherwise you wouldn't be here. How do we know the number? You never asked this question, your history teacher? How many people went to Poland? Raise your hand again. Okay, mostly Israelis, huh? How do we know the number? Nobody asked? We just made it up?
Nazi records.
Who said that? Okay, Mr. Volleyball. What's your name?
Matty.
Matty. Thank you very much. It's problematic, the Nazi documents. You came in a little late. Thank you for drinking. And the problem is they didn't write it down. They didn't put everything in writing. That was not the way they worked. So where do we know the number? Okay. Put your hands up. Who's in Poland? Your name. Your name? Ophir. When were you in Poland? When?
About 3 weeks ago.
Oh, great. You fell right into my hands, Ophir. Great. Now listen, there are rules of engagement now. I'm going to ask you a few questions, but you can only answer me yes or no. Verstehst? We got it? Okay. Before I ask you the questions, Ophir, a few facts and figures. We're going to go back to Auschwitz. At Birkenau, we know that Birkenau began its killing operations in March 1942. The first people that arrived there were a group of Jewish women from Slovakia. Those first transports that came to Birkenau. And it continuously worked until November 1944. It's estimated that about 1,300,000 people were murdered during that period at Birkenau. 90% of them were Jews. Ophir, we're going to go back to Birkenau. Okay? Not Auschwitz I, Birkenau. You got it? When you were at Birkenau, Ophir, did you see any mounds of clothing? Mounds of clothing. Clothing. Ophir, again, you were just there. At come on. You had supper? You okay? Did you see any mounds of clothing at Birkenau? No. Thank you. It's difficult. You see any mounds of bones and ashes at Birkenau?
No.
Did you see a crematoria at Birkenau?
Yeah.
I'll ask you again. Did you see a crematoria at Birkenau? You're right. Did you see a gas chamber at Birkenau? At Birkenau, did you see a gas chamber? Thank you. You're correct. Ophir, thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, anyone else who's been there can help Ophir with the questions I just asked. You won't see crematoria. You won't see a gas chamber. They were destroyed. 4 and 5 were totally razed. 2 and 3 were underground facilities. You see the ruins there of what people tell you was a crematorium gas chamber. Doesn't look like it, correct? Just some mound of stones. There's no ashes, no bones, no clothing. There's nothing there. Think about it. 1.3 million people were murdered at Birkenau in those 2.5 years. Disappeared into thin air. We have a problem.
So where does this figure come from?
No, I'm asking the questions right now. Thank you. This is the wise guy. How do we know that number? Yes, your name? Nina.
Adolf Eichmann
Yes.
in his evidence in the trial.
Okay, say more.
I used your advice, I Googled it.
First of all, where was Eichmann tried?
What was it?
Where was he tried?
Yes.
In a Jewish state. Gewalt. He got a fair trial?
No.
Nina, come on, you got to be kidding. You got a fair trial?
Probably not.
Okay. Now I know you're a real Israeli. Okay? Eichmann said certain things. He was at the Wannsee conference. He always said, and I would listen to the tapes. By the way, we have at Yad VaShem, we put up over our website. You can go through all the tapes. It's digitized over our website, www.yadvashem. Google it, O-R-G, Google it. And you can hear almost the entire testimony of the Eichmann trial. He always said, it wasn't me. It was some other schlemiel. I didn't know about that. I didn't write that order. I didn't know about this. He didn't deny he's Adolf Eichmann. Lieutenant Colonel Adolf Eichmann, the SS. That he didn't deny. But all these things he was responsible for and did and gave orders, wasn't me. So it's difficult to take from Eichmann any kind of real evidence. So how do we know? Come on, Technion, you just gave up?
You can start from.
Yes.
Did he say
Your first name, New York, your first name.
Oh,
Oh.
did he say it wasn't me, but it happened, or did he say it wasn't me? It
Oh, listen to the tapes. Listen to the tapes. He said, I didn't know anything about it. He didn't acknowledge anything. Happened or didn't happen. Something like terrible happened, but I wasn't responsible for it. Shahal?
Train records?
What?
Records about the train movements.
Okay, Shahal. Okay, now he's a transportation minister. Okay. The Deutsche Reichsbahn. Correct? Jews were transported by the Deutsche Reichsbahn, the German railway system, but we have a problem. It's a bureaucracy. And I'm going to show you some documents I have from the Deutsche Reichsbahn in German. You're going to see point of departure, point of arrival, a number. Okay, what happened when they got there? What happened when they got there, Shahal? The document doesn't tell you. It's a guy sitting in Berlin, has a little fan over his head, making up all these train schedules, but it doesn't tell you what happened when they got there.
What about like 10 years later? There were no sense they don't need talents.
You're asking, telling?
I'm asking.
Well, I'm not. I'm asking right now, okay? You're supposed to be telling. But I'll give you an answer. The censuses. If you go back to Eastern Europe, Poland, Hungary, Ukraine, these were not taken after the war. No one was looking for Jews. People were trying to rebuild their homes, their countries when the war was over. There was massive destruction in different places, especially the Soviet Union. They were just trying to rebuild, and they weren't trying to count people. In the Soviet Union, as I said, it numbers between 20 and 30 million. Well, where'd the 10 million people go? They disappeared into thin air? No one cared. No one cared. So where's the number 6? Don't make my life even easier, okay? I'm asking you now the cardinal question. How do we know the numbers? First name?
Mikhail.
Mikhail?
What about like our witness accounts from people?
Survivors. Ladies and gentlemen, what about survivors? What about survivors? What about survivors? Excelento. Perfecto. Survivors. There's one problem though. Ladies and gentlemen, most survivors never saw their next of kin, their parents, brothers and sisters being murdered in front of their own eyes. For most Jews that survived, the experience was the following. In a particular town, there was an Aktion, a German action, usually with Ukrainians or Lithuanians. They were helping them. They rounded up the Jews, brought them to a collection point, put them on the trains, and they were sent to the east. And the German used this bureaucratic term. They were given Sonderbehandlung, special treatment. Why are you complaining? They were sent on special trains, Sonderbezug, and they were given special treatment. They were sent to the east for Aussiedlung, resettlement. These are the euphemisms the Nazis used in their documentation. And that's what they told the Jews as well. You're being resettled in the east. That's the last time they saw their loved ones. They don't know they died on the train. They don't know where they arrived to. They don't know what happened when they arrived to those places. Usually the Yalt site that they keep, the survivors, will be the day they were sent to the east from the ghetto. They don't know where they were killed. So survivors, Mikhail, is an excellent point, but it's problematic. They can only give you a very, very small sliver of a very large story. Because people didn't have CNN, iPhones, Twitter, where they knew where people were going, what they were doing. There was no information. Yes.
How about survivors
Pavel.
From the guest camps?
Again?
How about the survivors from the guest camps?
Okay, survivors from death camps. I'm going to give you 4 death camps. Death camp Gremlo, just west of Lodz. Small death camp where they used these gas vans. Estimated 380,000 Jews were murdered there in 13 months. Pavel, 2 Jews survived. Death camp Belzhic, southeast Poland near Zamość. Operated for 12 months. Estimated 600,000 Jews were murdered there. Pavel, 2 Jews survived. Death camp Sobibor. There's an excellent film done over 25 years ago, The Escape from Sobibor. On the 14th of October 1943, the Jews that were working there revolted. 250,000 Jews were murdered there in 15 months. The revolt that took place, 300 Jews escaped to the forests. About 50 or 60 survived another year in the Polish forests of eastern Poland until the Soviets liberated that area. 50 or 60 survived. Treblinka. Ophir. You were at Treblinka? Treblinka, 900,000 Jews were murdered there between July 22nd, 1942 and the 2nd of August, 1943. On the 2nd of August, 1943, a revolt took place in that camp. 13 months, 900,000 Jews. Most of the Warsaw Jewry perished there in the summer of 42. Jews revolted. About 500 managed to run away to the forest. 80 to 100 actually survived the war. Those 4 death camps I just told you, Shahar can add them up. His mind is working. It's about 2 million Jews that were murdered. Maybe you have 150 Jews that survived, plus minus. Can they tell you what happened there? How many Jews were killed there? Can they? They weren't sitting and writing down things.
You can add it to the number of bodies that were...
Okay, but there were no bodies. Ask Ofer, he was there. There's nothing there at those camps. Everything was dug up, the bodies are burned, destroyed, the ashes are spread out in the area. There's nothing, zero, zilch, gornished at those camps. Yes. Paula.
What about the Jews that worked for the Germans?
Okay, there were Jews that worked at these different camps. For the most part, they didn't actually see what was going on. You give up? Can I give you the answer? Yes? Can I give you the answer? Because otherwise, I'm not going to get home. You're not going to go to, can I give you the answer? Yes. What? Your first name? Yes.
Thinking maybe all the camps were liberated by Allied armies. So if you take, compare the numbers that were sent by trains that you have written down by Deutsche Bank, and you take the numbers that the Allies actually saw when they arrived.
Oh, Michal, you're going into what we call
Further
very, very gray areas. Because the camps, when the Soviets, they liberated 2 camps. Majdanek in July 1944, near Lublin, and Auschwitz Birkenau, that complex on the 27th of January 1945. Well, first of all, at Majdanek, there were about 13,000 prisoners there. There were no Jews there. There were Russian POWs for the most part, and Polish POWs. At Auschwitz, there were about 7,000 people that were left there. And that's who they interviewed, who they met there when they liberated those. The other camps, Gremlo, Belzec, Sobibor, and Treblinka, there was nothing there in 1943. Nothing to liberate. Nothing. I'll give you the answer. First of all, how do you feel? Frustrated? Shachar? You don't like me anymore, huh? Not going to be invited back. That's it. Lost my invitation. Inbal's not going to invite me back. If you're frustrated, I've done my duty to God and country. Because I want you to be frustrated. I don't want you to be complacent. It's out there in the public domain. It's all over the internet. What I'm saying is what's being said in a much more provocative and aggressive way. Everything I've said has been true. What they're saying, a bunch of lies, and they're sort of combining half-truths, half-lies, and what you get is the end result, what you see what these people are saying. Hear what these people are saying. But this is dangerous. And it's not Ahmadinejad. It's right here. It's in Europe. It's in North America. And these people are publishing things. Before I give you the answer, there's a very good book. Don't read it before you go to sleep. It's called The Survivor. The Survivor. Didn't write it properly, but Frenchman, his name is Terence Depre. He's not Jewish. The subtitle of the book is An Anatomy of the Death Camps. Wrote the book over 30 years ago. It's not a very long book, but again, do not read it before you go to sleep. It is one of the most powerful, horrific collection of eyewitness testimonies of both Jews and non-Jews that went through death camps. And there's one story I want to relate to you which bears on what I've been doing this evening. One of the survivors tells this following story. That one of the SS would be laughing at this group of Jews that was taken out of the camp to work and brought back every day. He was laughing at them. And he'd say to them, even if one of you survive, no one's going to believe you. There'll be rumors, there'll be speculation, no one's going to believe you. Ladies and gentlemen, the Holocaust doesn't make sense. It's irrational. It doesn't make sense when you think about it. The Germans took a highly skilled workforce. Let me give you an example. One example out of many, the Lodz ghetto. Jews in Lodz had a corner of the market in the textile industry. That was a major Jewish profession throughout Poland, but specifically in Lodz. It's called the Manchester of Poland. In 1943, there were still 60,000 Jews in the Lodz ghetto. They were working over 200 different factories for the German war effort. They were tailors, they were Schumachers, they were Schneiders. That's what their professions were. They were furriers. You can't take a Polish peasant and turn him into a furrier overnight. And the German army needed this. Now, in 1943, the German army numbered 10 million soldiers. These schleppers in the Lodz ghetto produced 10% of all the German uniforms in 1943. Now, why would you take a highly skilled workforce and kill them? August 1944, ladies and gentlemen, they're all sent to Auschwitz because the Russians are getting too close to Lodz. And they wanted to destroy the ghetto. The Nazi ideology, at the end of the day, was such that no Jew was to be left alive. Doesn't make sense. Now, if you take other examples of genocide, take Rwanda, between the Tutsis and the Hutus. Hutus killing the Tutsis. Take Armenia, the Turks murdering the Armenians. There was some kind of reason, nationalistic, ethnic, religious, land. There was some kind of reason behind these murders. If you can give reasons to people killing people. At the end of the day, you really can't. But killing the Jews, it didn't make sense. They needed them for all kinds of things. And to track down, ladies and gentlemen, there's a small roads, small islands off Greece, with the small Jewish communities. The Nazis sent out SS to round up the 1,000 Jews in that little island, bring them to the mainland, put them on trains that sent them to Auschwitz-Birkenau in 1943. Why would you do that? Because Hitler's idea was a world without Jews. Totally Judenrein. Now, how do we know what we know? Thank you. I brought some things here from Yad VaShem. Thank you. And essentially, if we look at history as this circle, a pie, a mosaic, what the deniers are doing here, they're taking the historical event, the Holocaust, they're attacking a certain point and saying, you know, show me the document that Hitler signed giving an order to kill all the Jews. We call this the Führer befell. Doesn't exist, ladies and gentlemen. Not at Yad VaShem, not in the archive. We've scoured all over Europe. New archives open up in Eastern Europe. Doesn't exist. The guy didn't put it in writing. He gave the orders by word of mouth, but he didn't put it in writing. Oh, there's no order by Hitler? He knew nothing about it then. Must have been some other schlemiel down there, Eichmann or Kaltenbrunner or somebody else there that was responsible for this. You know, Ofer, show me a gas chamber or a crematorium at Birkenau. Can't. Oh, you can't show it to me, so maybe it never existed. Now, what deniers do, I just want to point this out before I give you the answer, is by attacking bits and pieces, they make the entire historical methodology irrelevant. None of these people are historians. And if you're an engineer, Shachar, building his bridge. He has to take gravity into consideration, besides wind, weight, all kinds of things. You know better than I do. Otherwise, your bridge is going to fall. What are the tools of the trade out of an historian? They're the source materials we have, documentation. And what we do as historians, all we are little Horatios. You see CSI? Yeah? Miami? Yeah? Horatio? Oh, we are little Horatios. We run around looking for evidence. And we have a crime scene that we have to put together. Crime scene, though, is not just in Miami, little place there in someone's apartment. It's all over Europe. It's the largest crime scene in history. And what historians do is we take the historical picture and we look for all the sources. We have German sources. We have Jewish. We have Polish. We have the Soviet sources. We have the International Military Tribunal after the war. By the way, much of the evidence that we have today comes from the International Military Tribunal 45-48. The Allies amassed 100,000 documents for that trial. Because the American methodology was, we don't bring survivors, we don't bring anything but hardcore evidence, documentation, to prove that these guys were criminals. That was a precedent, a judicial precedent that they initiated at the International Military Tribunal. And a new piece of information has just surfaced, the Enigma decodes. Everyone knows what the Enigma is? Shachar, Enigma, yes. Was ist das? What was the Enigma?
Coding machine.
Thank you. You just want to see movies? No, the U-2, that submarine. Don't you see movies? Come on. Can't be studying all the day. It was like a little typewriter, the Enigma. Anything that was sent by wireless during World War II had to be encoded. Germans are all the way from Stalingrad to France. Things were coming back to Berlin. They're sending these messages. What the Germans didn't know, that in 1940, British and Polish cryptologists had broken that code. And they were listening to everything they were saying. And MI8, Military Intelligence Section 8 in Britain, in London, a place called the Bletchley House, people were sitting, and they were getting information. 11 million pages of this documentation was collected. By the way, according to British intelligence, once a secret, always a secret, has not been declassified. 70 years later, not declassified. The problem is, the Brits and the Americans were allies. Much of this documentation found its way to the National Archives in Washington, D.C. By act of Congress, it was declassified about 5 years ago. Now, all you have to do is do www.nsa.gov. Hit enter, your computer will not crash. Believe me. And you go into their website, the NSA, and you're going to find, what I found there, a book, 167 pages, called Declassifying, Decoding the Holocaust. By one of their analysts, that he found the information that was sitting there, buried, of some of these decodes that were being sent by the SS to the headquarters in Berlin, giving numbers. It wasn't written down. Sent by wireless, giving all kinds of information, what they were doing to the Jews. Fascinating. I'm going to show you some of the documents and how I put this together. And this first document is from the Einsatz Gruppen. These are mobile SS killing squads that went into operation June 1941. Now, these guys wrote it down, what they were doing. They didn't just write it down, they gave exact numbers. And this over here, 195 of these reports were found and presented in Nuremberg war crime trials. And historian Raoul Hilberg actually compiled everything, cross-referenced it, and reached the number 1.4 million, the number of Jews that the Germans say in their own documentation they executed, they killed. They didn't use euphemisms here. It says here, executed. And this is Einsatzgruppen C, Kiev. Has anyone been in Kiev? Baba Yao. Does that name mean anything? That was the site of the mass murder in September 1941. You see here, Sonderkommando in collaboration with headquarters of Einsatzgruppen, 2 commands of police regiment itself, executed. Executed. 33,771 Jews in Kiev on the 29th and 30th of September. The German army subdued the city of Kiev on the 26th of September. 3 days later, they round up over 30,000 Jews, take them outside the city. This was a very deep natural ravine, which was outside the city then. Today it's inside the city. And during those 2.5 days, murdered not 30,000, not 33,000, but 33,771 Jews. You ask yourself, what's the mishigas? Why would they write down every single person? This went directly to Hitler. And he wanted to see how the final solution was unfolding. That's a document in German from the Nuremberg war crime trials. It's important to see these documents in German. At the bottom you see Juden exekuat, the Jews that were executed. But this is another document. It's not part of the Einsatzgruppen documents, but even more chilling. Even more chilling. This is Karl Jager. He was a member of the Einsatzgruppen in the Baltic countries, Einsatzgruppen A, killing Jews in Latvia, Estonia, Lithuania, and parts of White Russia. And he wrote a top secret document in December 1941. Look over here, only 5 copies ever made. I have to tell you, these bastards were extremely good bureaucrats. You never made just 1 copy of a document. 5 copies, that's a very high rate of secrecy. This was not meant to fall into anybody's hands. Number 4 fell into our hands. And what you see here, look on the left-hand side, you see here dates, places, exact numbers, and telling you men, women, and children. Look at just one place over on the right-hand side, the 23rd of August, 1941. That's pronounced Ponovich. That name mean anything to anybody? Ponovich, well, there's a yeshiva in Bnei Brak called Ponovich. But this is a small Jewish Lithuanian town where about 12,000 Jews were living there before the Nazis invaded. And you see over here on the 23rd of August, they were there before, if you look on the list over here on the left. On the 23rd of August, 1,312 male, 4,602 Frau Juden, female Jews, and 1,609 Kinderjuden. Altogether, 7,523 were killed that day. Now, as an historian, look at this document. First, I get chills on the preciseness. Why would you write down men, women, and children? Why would you write down Kinderjuden? Why? Why was that so important to them? Why? Ladies and gentlemen, why would they write it down? Say it. Once you wiped out the Kinderjuden, as we say, gemacht, it's all over. There's no more Jewish race. And they realized that. And that's at the seat, at the root of this Nazi ideology. By uprooting, destroying, exterminating the Jewish children, you've destroyed the next generation and generations to come. This is why they wrote it down. Now, it doesn't tell you who is a child. It's 13, it's 14. What's the cutoff point? How did they do this out in the fields? Ich weiß nicht. I don't know how it was done. I don't even want to know. But one thing is very clear here, how important it was to them. Now I want to ask you something. You heard Bradley Smith in that video I showed you. He said we have a moral issue here. Were the Jews more important than everybody else? What's the answer? Because it's right here in the document. Were the Jews more important than anybody else? For who? Jews aren't saying and never said, we were more important. We suffered more than anybody else. That's not the issue. And no one's saying that. At the end of the day, someone gets gassed, someone gets shot, someone gets a head chopped. It's all the same. You're dead at the end of the day. There's no way of making some kind of hierarchy of suffering. It doesn't work. Don't even walk down that road. But what this document is saying very clearly, for the Nazis, for the Germans, the most important people here are the Juden, the Jews. They made them their ultimate target. And when you look at this document, it's baffling. They were killing other people, Lithuanians and Gypsies. It's mentioned in the document, but the only group that's mentioned in paragraph after paragraph, men, women, and children, are the Jews. So there's something going on here. Well, genocide, Holocaust. Look over here, it says Kaisersdorf, the 26th of August 1940. Every Jewish man, woman, and child, 1,911. The Jewish question was settled in that small Jewish Lithuanian town. They murdered everyone. I want to show you something. And because we're in the week of Holocaust Memorial Day, I'm going to show you a film. There's a film we received at Yad VaShem in 1960. It was taken by someone, a German that served in the German Navy. It is the only piece of film we have where you can see Jews being shot. There's no sound to it. It was taken August 1941, a place called Liepāja. It's on the coast of Latvia. The person who took the film, his name is Richard Weiner. He gave it to the German authorities in the 1960s, and since then we have a copy of this. We show it in our museum in Yad VaShem. I'm going to show you now the entire segment, which is only several minutes, which we don't show in our museum. It's just the sound. I want to take down the sound? Because there's no sound here. It's going to make an awful noise. Okay. What you're seeing over here is that he had a day off. He happened onto a Russian airfield, which was destroyed by the Germans in summer of 1941, and he's playing. He served in the Navy. He finds some airplanes. Why not? Takes some pictures. He sits in the cockpit, and one of his friends are taking the movies, apparently. Then he happens on to the beach where the execution is taking place. And you see these people getting out of this truck. They're running into that trench. Up to the left is the firing squad. Now take a good look at the people. These are Jewish men. They have a white patch they're wearing. He gets a close-up of their faces. We have not identified these people. They're running into that trench. Again, look closely. Up to the left, you'll see the puffs of smoke. He goes back to the truck. A lot of people looking on here. Goes back to the truck. Takes some more pictures of those Jews getting off that truck. They're running right to their death. Does it one more time. But at this point, look where he's standing. You know, it's difficult to watch these pictures. Look how close he is here to the trench. He's maybe 10 meters away. This is how curious he was. He got that close to watching what was going on. At this point, apparently he'd seen enough. He still had film left in his camera. He goes back to the airfield and he takes these last pictures of the destroyed airplanes. And then this is the last frame. Take a look at this. Two people on bicycles. In Ecclesiastics, Kohelet, it says, Ein chadash tachat hashamish. There's nothing new under the sun. Life is going on as usual. 200 meters from there, they're shooting Jews. That's the only piece of film that we have today. We know that between the summer of 1941 and the closing hours of World War II, it's estimated today that close to 1.8 million Jews were shot. Some were shot just hours before the Allies came in and liberated different camps in Germany. But the numbers say about 1.8 million. That's all we have. This was a top secret operation. It was not to be documented. It's not to be filmed. I can tell you another secret, Yad VaShem. We have over 350,000 photographs in our archives. We've digitized everything. It's up over our website. You can download any one of those pictures. But one of the very close secrets we have in our archives, and I've asked this question more than once to our photo archivists, how many of those 350,000 pictures can you identify Jews about to be shot? Less than 200. Less than 200. This was not to be documented. This was top secret. I need sound now. I'm going to show you something, because I do not want to leave you just with that picture taken by not a perpetrator, but a bystander who was in cahoots with the perpetrators. I'm going to show you a very short testimony of a Jewish person. Her name is Dina Beitler. She was 7 years old. She was from Vilna. And she was taken to Ponau and shot there. This is a part of her testimony.
לקראת ערב הגענו למקום שם לפניו. ואז ראינו שם שיש כבר בורות. הבורות היו כבר מוכנות. וברור שידענו שזה לא, שאנחנו לא נשארים פה, שאנחנו לא עובדים. הם עקפו אותנו מסביב, זאת אומרת, עם הכלבים. לקחו אותנו באמצע, ומסביב עם כלבים עמדו על ידינו. אני התפשטתי ולא לגמרי. אמרו די, נשארתי עם שמלה ונעליים. הסבתא והדודה שהייתה איתי, הם היו צריכים להתפשט לגמרי. ואז לקחו 10 אנשים, כל 10 אנשים, צבו ללכת לבור, למד על יד הבור, ושם היו כבר אוטומטים, זה הכלי הריגה, עם האלה שישבו שם. הם צריכים לעמוד 10 אנשים, הם היו, זה היה על יד הבור, ואנחנו, וירו בהם והם נפלו. אני הייתי כמעט בין האחרונים. ואז הגעתי לבור, ירו בנו ונפלתי. כבר הבור היה מלא. אני נפלתי בקצה, שהיו כבר הרבה אנשים, ואני הייתי ממש למעלה, בקצה. ואז הסתכלתי וראיתי הכל מה זאת אומרת, ישבתי, זאת אומרת, התהפכתי איכשהו, והתיישבתי על המתים. הרבה אנשים הם פגעו ויש אנשים שלא פגעו, ובגלל זה כל הזמן בבור היו בכי, וכל אחד היו ממש היום ונורא, אי אפשר לסבול היה בכי, וביקשו, אז זאת אומרת שרחמים, ובאו אחר כך את הנאצים, ועוד פעם הם שמעו שיש אנשים עוד חיים, אז הם באו וירו בהם. שמה. בת 7 הייתי.
It took her 60 years just to tell that story. This person lives 5 minutes away from Yad VaShem. Kiryat Yovel is a neighborhood that borders with Yad VaShem. What happened is because she was one of them, among the last groups that was to be shot, the bullet just grazed her leg. She fell alive into the pit. When dark fell, she crawls out of the pit, knocks on the door of a Polish peasant, and they took her in. And she survived. She never went back to the ghetto.
I can't hear you.
She never went back to the ghetto.
So it's not very
Yes,
quiet.
I'm sorry. As I said, it took almost 60 years for her to tell this story. When we were building the new museum, we turned to her and incorporated this testimony inside the new museum. That's the voice of the victim. And in that way, close to 60,000 Jews were murdered at Ponau. Ophir, I brought you a present. I don't want you to walk away mad at me. That's what you didn't see. This is an engineering sketch. Engineers. A firm called Topf und Zuna, Topf and Sons. working out of Erfurt in September 1942, signed the tender of their lives. The Bauleitung, the building administration of Birkenau, employed them to build 4 gigantic crematoria and gas chambers. They finished them in June of 1943. And what you see here is one of these as engineering sketches. We have hundreds of them. This is the crematoria 2 and 3 were the same. This is your undressing room. You can fit up to 1,000 people at a time. This is the Gaskammer, a 90-degree angle, much smaller. And you have over here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, those boxes. In each one, there are 3 ovens. 15 ovens in every one of these crematoria. There were 4 of them. You have 60 ovens. This is what they built. It took them between September and June 1943 to finish the construction. Once these were finished, this became the pinnacle of German technology in mass murder. And they could have killed every single Jewish person, and others if they wanted to, by using these gas chambers. Now you don't see them because they blew them up. This document, a little bit difficult to see, it says June 1943. I left it in German. Is a bill of guarantee by Topf und Zuna to the Bauleitung, the building administration, the SS Kammer, where they write down here that on that bill of guarantee it says in 24 hours of operation they could burn 4,756 Personen. This is how efficient they were. Now you couldn't see that. The documentation we have. And they left a trail of documentation. As much as they tried to destroy the documents, they were such good bureaucrats, they couldn't destroy it all. And so many people were involved here in this operation. Professionals, gas experts, ventilation experts, engineers. There's an album we have at Yad VaShem, about 200 photographs that was left by the building administration. We have this at Yad VaShem. You see the 3 in sets of 3. You see 2 workers there on the left. It's not an operation, it's still being built. This was the only death camp that used that method of killing, where you have 3 of these ovens connected to one source of energy. Ladies and gentlemen, they patented it. You could burn 3 bodies for the price of 1. Save on energy. These are the first greeners. Why not? They actually patented this. They put their name on the machinery. They're proud of what they had built. And I have been to Birkenau, been to Auschwitz, inside the museum, which you don't see as visitors, but as Yad VaShem experts, we've been there. We've seen bits and pieces. It was blown up, but they've kept the pieces there, a lot of them in their archives. And you see their imprint, Topf und Zuna, Erfurt. They were proud of what they built. By the way, 4 of the top members of this company were caught by the NKVD, the Russian secret police, after the war. They were brought to trial in the Soviet Union. And during their interrogations, a very interesting Jewish-British historian, Gerald Fleming, he has a book called Hitler and the Final Solution, but by the 1994 edition, because he added 2 chapters, we visited the Moscow archives and found the interrogations of these guys. They were interrogated by the Russian secret police. They asked them, do you guys know what you were building? Of course we know what we were building. We built crematoria before the war. We wanted to stay in business. Okay. Then they asked him, how many times did you visit the facility when it was working? Well, he came once or twice. We know they were there at least 12 times from survivor testimony. Here they were lying. They all, 4 of them, got long prison sentences for being involved in building this machinery of death. But you don't see them. They're all destroyed. This is a train document, but I want to get to the end here because it's getting late. This is some of the Jewish documentation. We're almost to the end here. You cannot understand the history of the Holocaust solely upon German documentation. They only tell us part of the story. As you saw in that first film, the victims have no voice. They're running to that trench. Second film from the survivor has a voice, tells us exactly what was going on, how she felt as a 7-year-old. The Jewish documentation fills in a lot of those gray areas when they got off of the trains. The train documents only tell you point A and their arrival, point Z. But the Jewish survivors can tell you what happened when they got off those trains. The ones that survived. The selection process, separation from families, last time they saw their loved ones. And Jews that worked inside the gas chambers called Sonderkommando. There's another film, but don't see it. It's called The Gray Zone. It's on television this week, just don't see it, okay? You really won't sleep and you'll have nightmares. It's about the Sonderkommando, and they revolted in October 1944. But they also did something else. These guys, knowing they weren't going to survive, wrote diaries in Yiddish. They buried it around the ground of the crematoria, sometimes even encasing it in concrete, hoping and praying that someone would find this and know what happened. Ladies and gentlemen, late 1940s, early 1950s, the Auschwitz authorities found some of these diaries. Zaman Gadotsky, Zaman Leventhal, and Leb Langfuss, 3 Polish Jews. I just brought you one here, Zaman Gadotsky. They were very religious Jews. And when you read these diaries, this is Dante's Inferno multiplied by 1,000, telling you what they were doing, how they gave some kind of prayer, honor to their own family members before they threw them in the crematoria. And when you look at this, Zaman Gadotsky, in his diary, writes an introduction in 4 languages. The first language over here, Polish, Russian, French, and German. The English we added in the English edition. Take an interest in this document, which contains very important material for the historian. It's a cry. Don't throw this away, please. There's a lot of information that you have to know. Now, I call this survivor testimony. He didn't survive, but his diary did. Dedicated to my family burned in Birkenau, Auschwitz. My wife Sonia, my mother Sarah, my sister Esther Rachel, my sister Luba, my father-in-law Raphael, my brother-in-law Wolf. He tells us in his diary that he had to burn the bodies of his family members. There is nothing more difficult than reading these testimonies. They can tell us exactly what happened during the last minutes when these transports arrived, after the selection, and those were taken to the gas chambers, what transpired there. And that gives us a much fuller picture. The last thing I'm going to show you is this Enigma decode, which I found myself, www.nsa.gov. And this is from January 15th, 1943, Lublin, the headquarters of Operation Reinhard. Operation Reinhard was the code name for the destruction of Polish Jewry, 1942 and 43. And what you have here, it was found, picked up by the Allies, decoded, and got buried in a whole bunch of other documentation. You have here, L is Lublin, Majdanek was the death camp closest to Lublin. B, Belzec, S, Sobibor, T, Treblinka. And when you take those 4 death camps together, 1,274,166 Jews were killed in those 4 camps by the 31st of December 1942. That's what this document says. It was sent directly to Berlin. Wasn't written down. Wasn't written down. And we found it. Now, by taking all of this information, and that's what we do as historians, remember Horatio, we take all this documentation and we attach it together, cross-reference it, that's where we get the number 6 million. It's painstaking, it's difficult, but that's what we do. And that's how we know the numbers. These guys left documentation. The Poles left documentation. The Soviets left us documentation. At Yad VaShem, we have close to 200 million pages of documentation in 35 different languages. And we need about $100 million to computerize our entire archive, so if anyone wants to cough up something, we'd be happy to accept it. But we're trying now to computerize and to cross-reference. Once that's computerized, we can get to all the names. It's estimated there are 20 million names in our documents that we have at Yad VaShem. They're not all Jews. Some people mentioned multiple times. But computerization, hopefully in the next 10 years, will bring us to that point. We'll be able to know much more. Just what we have right underneath in our archives that we haven't all seen to this date. I want to end I don't want to end the discussion on doom and destruction. I do want to say that the responsibility rests on your shoulders to know, to Google, to get the information. Most of the stuff is out there. I haven't invented everything. It's right there. It's right over the different websites that you can access. And how we put it together, I try to give the methodology, how we put together the story of what we know and what exists. I want to end on a very different note altogether. A little bit upbeat. I think that's the way to end an evening like this on the Holocaust, Holocaust Denial. And this is a love story. Inbar, you like a love story?
Yes.
This is for you then. You invited me, this is for you. And these are two Holocaust survivors. This is Nahum and Genya Manor. They live in Beersheba. Both born in Krakow. And they were part of Schindler's factory, the Emile factory in Krakow. Genya, her mother and brother were working there as well. Nahum was working there by himself. He was a machine operator. Actually, he was a mechanic, different cars. She was a machine operator. She was 17, he was 20. In Bar, they fell in love. It happens, even in war. And Nahum turns to Genya. He courts her. He had books, by lending her books, talking about the stars. There were no flowers. There was nothing that he could give to her but his own love. And he says to Genya, if we survive, I want to marry you in a small town outside of Tel Aviv called Givatayim. Actually, the Borochov neighborhood of Givatayim. Why there of all places? Nahum's story is fascinating. His parents were Zionists. They came on the fourth wave of immigration called the Grabsky immigration in the fourth Aliyah from 1923 to 1929. About 80,000 Polish Jews came to the shores of the British Mandate of Palestine, the land of Israel. Among them, the Manor family. They were Zionists. And where did they settle? In the Borochov neighborhood of Givatayim. They bought a home there. And that's where he grew up as a young child. 1929, the stock market. 1932, there was an economic depression here in the British Mandate of Palestine. He had no work. He took his family back to Poland. Most people didn't do that. But he had a business there. He had to support his family. Took him back to Poland, to Krakow. Nahum is the only surviving member of his family. His father, his mother, brother and sister were sent to Belzhic, where most of the Krakowian Jewry perished in 1942. The war is over in 1945. Nahum gets on one of the first boats. They go back to Krakow, realize what's going on there. He gets out, goes to the west, gets on one of these boats that brings him to the mandate here in Palestine, the land of Israel, and he joins the Palyam, the Jewish underground, and he becomes a wireless operator on the illegal ships that brought Jews here between 1945 and 48. They didn't see each other for 4 years. They have love letters. They wrote back and forth to each other. In December 1949, Genya left Poland. She left her mother and brother, came not to Palestine, but to the state of Israel. In Bar, on January 17th, the year 1950, Nahum and Genya were married in the Borochov neighborhood of Givatayim. But that's not the end of the story. It was a very small wedding. Nahum had no parents, no family whatsoever. Genya, her mother and brother, the only family she had were in Poland. Very small wedding. Friends they knew from the camps, other Schindler Jews. On January 17th, the year 2000, they wanted to celebrate their 50th wedding anniversary at the most significant place they could possibly imagine. Catholic Cemetery on Mount Zion. Anyone know why? Schindler, Oskar Schindler, passed away in October 1974, went in for a simple operation. In his will, he stipulated that if he does not survive, he wants to be buried with his friends, the Schindler Juden here in Israel. October 1974 was laid to rest in a Catholic cemetery in Mount Zion. Wasn't a very good Catholic, but that's where he was laid to rest. And on January 17th, the year 2000, they wanted to celebrate their 50th wedding anniversary. This was their matchmaker, their Shadchan. This was their Messiah. He saved them. They're alive because of what he did for them. We had an international seminar of educators, and we wanted to honor them. We went with them to Schindler's grave. He brought a bottle of whiskey to make a l'chaim. This was a very joyous occasion. But he did something else he had not done before. brought his son, their daughter, and their 4 yingele, their 4 grandchildren. They had never done that before, but this is a special occasion. Close that window, and I want to open up a different window. Do you all remember Schindler's List? The gold ring? If you don't remember, see the film again. It's not made up. Spielberg's an excellent Hollywood director. He didn't make this up. It actually happened the way you saw in the film. They took one of the gold fillings of one of the survivors, fashioned a gold ring, and inside that gold ring they took a verse from the Talmud, Masechet Sanhedrin, where it says the following: one who saves a single life as if he saved a world entire. And they inscribed that in Hebrew, and they gave that just the way you saw in the film to Oskar Schindler there at the end. What happened to the ring is a different story, not important now. Let's go back to Nachum Ingenia. Ladies and gentlemen, I've been dealing in Holocaust education research for the past 3 decades. Each and every one of us asks ourselves the ultimate question: can we make a difference? Can we really make a difference? The answer is a resounding yes. One person, Oskar Schindler, made a tremendous difference in the lives of 1,200 Jews. And right before me, I saw that difference because it wasn't just 1,200. It was countless future generations. Today, it's estimated there are over 15,000 descendants of the original 1,200 that are alive because of what one man decided to do during this very bleak and dark history. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much.